to deny yourself. God will take care of you, but you have to resist the narcissistic impulse to self-aggrandizement. And you can be caught up in the business of service and still be caught up in self-worship. There's some preachers who've convinced themselves that when they preach a good sermon, God, that those are their gifts. Pat themselves on the back. Don't you know that I don't listen to half of the good stuff y'all say to me in the back of the church? Because folks say nice stuff to you all the time. You can't believe on your own press. You can't believe what folk say to you. I used to believe it when people told me you preached a good sermon. Then I was standing next to somebody who I knew had preached a terrible sermon. And the folk told that person the same thing they told me. From then on, I didn't believe anything you had to say. Every now and then, God has a way of reminding us that whatever gifts we have, we ought to give glory to God. If you're blessed in order to bless somebody, don't allow folk to glorify you. Give glory to God. If you help somebody, give glory to God. If you feed somebody, give glory to God. You ought to go in your secret closet. You ought to award somebody. You ought to help somebody without looking for anything in return, because if you do what you do for applause, and don't get me wrong, we all like some encouragement every now and then. But if you do what you do for applause and for accolades, you will become addicted to applause and accolades, and you'll do just about anything in order to get it. Isn't that what's wrong with our culture in this moment? Isn't that what's wrong in a real sense in our community? Black folk have been absolutely brilliant in so many fields, but certainly we've been brilliant in the work of art and entertainment. We've produced some of the greatest musicians and singers and entertainers that the world has ever known. We took our suffering and we turned it into something beautiful. We took our pain and turned it into power. When you listen to the blues and the spirituals and the gospels, you have to recognize that they all come from the same root. The anguished ruminations of a subjugated people speaking to God in their own voice. Even when we were on the bottom of the bottom, when we were considered 2/3 of a person, our music buoyed us and gave us hope. We learned how to sing those old spirituals. I got shoes, you got shoes. And we would defy segregation and say all of God's children got shoes. You might circumscribe me here, but when I get to heaven, I'm going to put on my shoes and shout all over God's heaven. And then we look at the master out of the corner of our eyes and say, heaven, heaven. Everybody talking about it ain't a going there. Our music gave us hope. Our music encouraged us to keep on keeping on. And then as we made our way onto the big screen and onto the stage, we looked good. I love the sounds of Motown, because Berry Gordy used to train those young people before they showed up on the stage. They didn't just know how to sing, they knew how to conjugate a subject and a verb. They knew how to shine their shoes. They knew how to put on dignified outfits, and they all would spin around at the same time. They all looked good. We were the Supremes. We were the Four Tops. We were on top of the world. Now we use all kinds of ugly words to describe ourselves. Why? Because somebody applauded. And the more they applauded, the worse we became. The more they applauded, the more ridiculous we became. And not only are folk on the stage looking ridiculous and sounding ridiculous in order to get applause, here you are working a minimum wage job. At least Soldier Boy is getting paid. But here you are trying to get a minimum wage job with your pants hanging down, your hair looking all crazy just because somebody applauds. When you become addicted to somebody else's affirmation, you become a slave to that. And so Jesus says, no, I will not bow down to the culture. I will not bow down to the worst stereotypes of who I am. I know who I am. I'm a child of God. I know who I am.